sick and dying on the job, and at worst doing everything they can do to keep people all riled up and crazy, and wanting to go out and get sick. It's kind of an interesting pivot, and I think kind of where we're going to spend the first segment of this week's panel. We've got our all-star panel of folks on the program. Rich Ojeda, executive director or national spokesperson of No Dems Left Behind. Sarah Burris, reporter of RawStory, and our professor Brett Pransky. Thanks everyone for being here.
Hey, thanks for having us.
So let's start with you, Rich. The party of Trump, now the party of the working class. They now care about working class voters.
Absolute garbage. All of the people that lost their jobs in the last year of this pandemic, and so many people in this country absolutely desperate, needing relief, and not one single Republican, so-called the working party class now, even supported any of the relief that come down to these people. I mean, these people are they are the party of the double standard is what they are.
Sarah, you got a thought?
He's damn right. That's for sure. We just spent the last 2 years being completely screwed over by these people. And then, several decades before that, where the union busting, the low wages, the resistance to raising the minimum wage, it's just like, there's one thing after another with the Republicans. And so this idea that they've decided they're a party of the working man, it's like, okay, well then where's the raise in the minimum wage? Where is, healthcare for all Americans? Like, where is training programs and all of these things that are good for working people? Where are those policies? Where are you guys going to propose some bills? Like, what's happening now?
Yeah, I mean, you could do something, and I know they're just apoplectic over corporate America, but how about some action with the false words? Brett, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I just and this has been kind of a steady thing over the last for a very long time, but especially over the last 4 years, just over the last 4 years. Every time you think there's something they won't say, they say it. So the first time I heard this idea of the GOP is going to try to rebrand themselves is that no, they'd never do that. And then they do. It's astonishing. I mean, we take it back to to the American Rescue Plan. Not a single Republican voted for it. And it was squarely to help working people. I mean, it's one of those things where, you just can't listen to what they say. I mean, not a word. You have to watch what they do. It's the only way you can determine what they're serious about, what they're not serious about.
And of course, right now, the reason that this has popped up is because they're apoplectic over the fact that 100 corporate CEOs got together on a phone call, on a Zoom call, and said, hey, we think that black people should be allowed to vote. This is what has made the right just all bunched up in the panties and all wadded up. And I go, look, I've been on the anti-corporate bandwagon for a long time. Let's break up some of these monopolies. Let's bring real competition back. And if they truly are, I say, welcome to the reality. We've been waiting on you. But this isn't that.
Yep. But that's the key thing there is, here they are, they're actually the party of the corporation is exactly what they are. That's why they support Citizens United. But once again, to hear Mitch McConnell say something like, corporations need to stay out of politics. And all that means is he wants them to keep their mouths shut and let the Republicans do what the Republicans do. But when the time comes, they expect the corporations to continue, passing down those checks. And that's exactly what it is. That's the only reason why they stay in that they even have a chance in these elections anymore.
Does that mean that they're going to start giving away the checks? They're going to stop accepting all of these checks from these companies?
Oh,
yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No chance of that happening.
Yeah, don't. And this is one of those things where I think corporate America will let them do their little song and dance for a little bit. They'll take the little bit of beating because it'll take some of the heat off of them because they get to look like the good guy. And I'm not someone who's going to give corporate America you're doing so well on this. They're on the right side of history. Good luck. Thanks for being here on this. But I'm still paying attention to how badly you treat your workers, how you cheat people, how you've cheated this country out of trillions of dollars. I'm still there. Go ahead, Rich.
Rick, I think that's my thoughts. My thoughts is that you see corporations now coming out talking about we need to support people, their ability to be able to cast their vote. And it's almost as if like they're trying to kind of rebrand themselves as being like, hey, we're with the people too. And it's probably, as far as I'm concerned, probably for them to basically say, okay, so if you're going to do anything, just don't do it so much to us. Let us continue to be able to win in everything that we do. But yeah, we'll give you a little something on this side so that we can say that we support people voting.
Can't argue with that.
It's one of those things where I feel like because millennials and Gen Xers and Gen Z people are really socially conscious. This idea of boycotting a company and using a specific company and being loyal to a company is as a result of it being a good company. And because there is a plethora of stuff available for people to choose from, I feel like this is a marketing ploy. Right? Like this is just something where they can say, oh, look, we really do care about people. We really are socially conscious. Please don't be afraid to buy our stuff.
Right. And that's something we need to pay attention to as well, because, the GOP might be a hypocrisy machine, but so are U.S. corporations. And they've been playing this game back and forth. It's like, well, I can be more hypocritical than you can. Okay, hold my beer. And I'm going to go say this and so on. These companies that have said we're going to stop donating to Republicans and we're going to do it for this long and we're not going to do it until they get right about this or that or the other thing. And then, a news cycle or two later, they're back to giving money to Republicans. Yep. So, I mean, we've got this kind of hypocrisy on both sides of this issue. And when both sides, I'm not talking about Democrat, Republican, I'm talking about the GOP and their donors.
Well, how many people remember the Business Roundtable when they came out with they had their little powwow? They said, oh, inequality is bad. We really need to do something to not be so focused on shareholders. We need to start thinking about stakeholders, our customers and our workers. And we're going to do better, we promise. And then we go through this pandemic where corporate America and the wealthy have never been more profitable. And I'm going, What about that Business Roundtable thing you were going to do with your workers and your customers? Did I miss that?
Right.
Yeah, this is after they got a.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say this is after they got a massive tax cut, and a lot of them got PPP loans.
Right.
Yeah.
Again, you can't trust you can't trust what they say. You have to watch what they do.
And this is where I come back to: if the Republican Party right now is going to pivot and be the party of the working class, I welcome them. I welcome them with policy. If you're going to increase the minimum wage to $15 an hour, I applaud your activity. I haven't seen it yet. If you really want to hurt corporate America, though, if you really want outside of your feigned outrage and bloviation, if you actually want to do something, how about we raise taxes on them? I don't know, like it was back during the good socialist years of Dwight David Eisenhower, a good Republican president. How about we do that? Because the corporate tax rate was 56% back in 1953, not 21. You want to go after corporate America? That's how you do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it would pay for infrastructure.
It would pay for infrastructure, and it would slap them on the wrist. But here's the thing, and this is what we know, Rich. We know it's going to take money out of the campaigns, and Mitch McConnell can't have that happen.
Well, but see, that's the thing. Let's see them do it. Let's see them become the party of the working class. Let me see the Republicans go out here and start pushing, for better wages and start pushing for better safety on the job and supporting unions. Because let me tell you something, they can say all they want. Saying and doing is two different things. And you know that they're not going to. Look, Mitch McConnell actually has threatened, if we ever come back to power, we may push a national right to work. That's not the party of the working class. That's absolutely attacking the working class.
Yeah.
Fact.
Go ahead, Sarah.
No, absolutely. And the other thing, too, is if they stop taking money from corporations, they're not going to have a lot of money left because their party is shrinking so much. And the majority of people who are going to be willing to donate to them are, folks who don't have a whole lot of money, right? The Trump supporter world is not incredibly rich. They're folks who can't even stay in his hotels. So this is not something that would be a smart move for them, but
when we see Republicans when we see Republicans say that they will not take corporate PAC money, then either hell has froze over or they are actually making a change.
No, you're right. But
and I would add to that, I'll believe in this corporate benevolence when I see entire ad campaigns dedicated to Coke and Pepsi having at each other on the airwaves, talking about who pays their workers more and whose healthcare is better and all these different things. When I see that, when they go into actual competition about who's better for their workers, well, then maybe I'll start to believe it. But until then, it's just PR.
But on that point, did you see Jeff Bezos came out the other day after Amazon spent $200 million fighting 5,000 workers organizing in Bessemer, Alabama? He's now come out and said, maybe we do need to look at working conditions, and maybe now we need to do something about making things better for our workers.
And that's where I kind of think that what they're doing right now is they're trying to, brand themselves. Jeff Bezos knows that the majority of people in this country look at him as a absolute greedy human being. And this is, his way of maybe trying to steer that a little bit. But once again, you got to put your money where your mouth is. Let's see you do it. Okay. You're the richest person in the United States of America. So what have you done to increase the wages of your people, to increase safety on the job, to support unionization in your workers? Because it's not the Walton family has a group that flies around in an airplane that just waits to hear the word, somebody in Indiana has said the word unionize, and then they go land to crush that shit immediately.
Right. And it's, when it comes to Amazon, if he's talking about improving working conditions, there's only one reason for it. And that's because he doesn't want 12 more Bessemer, Alabamas on his watch tomorrow, which is what's going to happen. People are going to see what happened there and the traction that those people got, and they're going to start to duplicate that behavior in other places. Jeff Bezos knows it. He wants to prevent it. So he's going to come out and talk about all the great things that his company does, and he'll spend money on PR campaigns to do it because he doesn't want to have to dump, 200 or 300 million more in 19 different locations 6 months from now. Yeah. He'd rather spend a few $1 million on some PR stuff today.
No, and I look
and
at this.
Lose them.
Go ahead, Sarah.
And lose again. That's the thing.
Again.
And one of the things, though, that I wonder about is if you start having this huge union drive and obviously Amazon is coming into communities in full force. They're building another Amazon facility in Oklahoma City. And so if you start having more and more Amazons and tons of people working for it and they're unionized and they're actually making good wages and they have 401ks and health insurance, I feel like that's going to be one of those things that makes Walmart and Target and all these other companies look like complete asses, because there's a difference between those workforces. And it's one of those things where I feel like if you have these people working at Walmart who are like, man, this sucks. Across the street, I can get a hell of a lot better wage and benefits. And so I'm going to work for Amazon. That's really going to bring down their workforce in other companies. And so I keep hoping that maybe the more unionization we get, the more boats actually rise and everybody benefits.
I'd like to see one Amazon unionized. Let's start there.
Let me tell you though, I actually went to One Hacker Way, which is Facebook. And do you know that Facebook, the workers at Facebook, the blue collar workers at One Hacker Way actually sleep 5 days a week in the buses that transport people to and from the actual headquarters of Facebook. Because at the end, if you go right outside around the headquarters of Facebook, those places are small. They look like coal camp houses with stucco, but they're $2.1 million. That blue collar workers that work at Facebook cannot afford to live anywhere close. So 5 days a week, they sleep in buses. And on the weekends, they go home to see their families. They actually started talking about unionization, and Mark Zuckerberg quickly did all kinds of things to try to make sure that didn't happen. And it's just another person that is at the top of a corporation that is actually, they can act like they care all they want, but the truth is they are absolutely as greedy as you could get. And the reason why, as long as we have a Fortune 500 where everybody's bucking to try to be number one on it, it's never going to change. If they have to figure out ways where they can screw over the workers for their retirement to be able to make a little more money to rise up that ladder. That's what their goal is, and it's a shame.
No, I'm right there with you. And in fact, the Rand Corporation did a study, not too long ago. They came out with it, said, over the last 45 years, American workers have been cheated out of something like $102 trillion during that 45-year period in lost wages, lost benefits, and stolen pensions. So if the GOP really wants to be the party of the working class, how about we go back and get some of that wealth that's been stolen and redistributed from workers, get it back to the working people from the wealth class with a higher tax? Thoughts?
Amen.
I think, go ahead.
Oh, that was it. Amen.
Amen.
Yeah, call them out and say, put your money where your mouth is. Instead of waiting for them to come up with their plan, how about we actually, put it and say, here it is. Let's see you do this.
Yeah, kind of hard to do, though, when you've got the Republican Party they've pledged their name away to Grover Norquist and the anti-tax crowd. Kind of hard to do that. But it is what it is. I'm going to take a quick break, guys. I'll stick through the break. We'll be right back with our all-star panel of Rich Ojeda, Sarah Burris, and the professor, Brett Pransky. Stick around. Right back after this.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1854. That was the day wealthy populist and labor advocate Jacob Coxey was born. He grew up in Danville, Pennsylvania, and worked as a stationary engineer in an iron mill. Soon he moved to Ohio and opened a sand quarry. He entered politics and initially campaigned as a candidate for the Greenback Party. By the 1890s, he had thrown his lot in with the populists. When the Panic of 1893 hit, workers flooded the industrial Midwest in search of jobs. Cities across the country were overwhelmed with the newly unemployed begging on the streets. Coxey proposed a good works bill which demanded $500 million for federal jobs. He supported paper currency, public works projects, transportation for rural areas, and full employment. He decided to take his proposal directly to Congress by organizing a protest march on behalf of the unemployed. Hundreds joined him on his march from Ohio to Washington, D.C., forming Coxey's Army. They set off from Massillon, Ohio on Easter Sunday, 1894, supported by populists and organized labor. Estimates of marchers ranged into the tens of thousands. His army, however, was stopped along the way by court injunctions preventing them from commandeering trains and seizing railway lines as they traveled. About 500 eventually reached Washington, D.C. As Coxey climbed the steps of the Capitol to demand the Good Jobs Bill, he and his army were met by police forces, which attacked the crowd and beat them back from the Capitol steps. Years later, his campaigning finally paid off, and he was elected mayor of Massillon. In 1944, he was invited back to the Capitol steps to deliver his Good Jobs Bill, which by that time had become official policy. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I guess, this is one of those boys to men kind of thing. Fox News, and I guess, if you're watching Fox, you're probably not getting the best information, over misinformed, lots of propaganda, but this was one of those blatant things. Back when the kid who came from Illinois to Wisconsin decided he was going to take the AR-15 that he bought with his stimulus money, 17-year-old kid, cross state lines, gets a gun, takes it across state lines with the stimulus money. You have Pam Bondi, the former Attorney General of Florida, saying that he was a little boy just out there trying to protect his community, even though Kenosha, Wisconsin was not his community. He was from Illinois. And now you've got Sean Hannity out there saying the kid who was shot in the alleyway in Chicago with his hands up, unarmed, 13 years old, that's a man. 17-year-old little boy protecting his community. 13-year-old man. There's a difference. I think the white-black thing is very, very alive here, and to share some thoughts on, well, what this looks like. Our all-star panel, the professor, Brett Pransky, Sarah Burris, reporter at RawStory, and Rich Ojeda, national spokesperson, No Dems Left Behind. So let's start with you, Sarah. Thoughts on this frame? Is this deliberate, or was this just, well, it was an accident?
Of course this is deliberate. This is one of those, right-wing spin machines. And you were saying Pam Bondi was part of this interview. Like, that woman needs to get a job so bad. So sometimes I just feel like she's just going on Fox News so that she can try and get somebody to hire her. But after, her terrible performance during the impeachment trial, like, that's not working out very well.
Yeah, she'd be chasing an ambulance.
With most of these ideas that, somehow a black teenager is older than a white teenager who's 7 years, older than him or something, like, that's just absurd. And it's obvious racism, but I think too, it shows how disconnected they are with the reality of the rest of the country. This is not something where, people are really divided on this. When people see a kid get shot, they tend to support the kid, it's not the same thing as, some old dude with firing his gun at a cop. This is a totally different deal. No. And I feel like with the Derek Chauvin stuff, more and more I'm hearing my conservative family talk about how, Derek Chauvin is guilty. And that's the first time I really feel like we've taken this big turn in the way that people view police brutality and the people that they're killing.
Yeah, but the Chauvin thing was an extreme. This is, you got the video right there. You can't deny, although Dr. Fowler did try, you can't deny what they did, what he did. Rich, you look like you're ready to jump out of your skin.
Well, there's a few things. It's good to see police officers, taking the stand and actually coming out against the blue wall of silence. We have a racism problem in this country. I think that Fox News, for the most part, as far as I'm concerned, is almost a racist, organization with the things that they push and the things that they say. I will tell you, and I've said this for quite some time, that if we're going to talk about police brutality in this country, the only way we're ever going to see anything done is that we have to tie police brutality to the police officers' retirement. Because if we did that, then we would see critical thinking. We would see people not willing to run in there and just do what they do because they don't want to lose the things that they've worked for. We need to raise the pay of police so that, we have a better caliber of people challenging for those jobs. But we've got a serious problem in this country with race. We've got a serious problem in this country with guns. As a person who carried them for 24 years in the military, I do not see any reason why the guns that I carried in Iraq and Afghanistan should be on people's shoulders when they're walking through Walmart at any given time. So we got a serious problem in this country, and we have to address this problem.
Yeah.
And people have to step up to the plate. It's good, like I said, that you see police officers coming out and speaking against Derek Chauvin, but that was because it was on camera. There's so much that wasn't on camera that continues going down that path of the silence of protecting the brothers of the blue, and it's got to change.
Yeah, it's really scary stuff. But yeah, as you said, it's good to see a couple come out and speak out against it. But sadly, in looking at this kid from Illinois who went to Kenosha, Wisconsin, and shot and murdered people with the AR-15 he bought with the stimulus money he got, which you go, what parent allows that to happen? But here you got this 17-year-old, going and doing this, and we're now finding out, thanks to The Guardian, that a bunch of police departments, a bunch of police officers, a bunch of these folks have donated money to his defense and, sending him words of encouragement. You're a hero. You did nothing wrong. We seriously have a problem with our law enforcement community if this is the message that some of them are sending.
I was going to say, it makes me think of that law that we just had, that we have in Oklahoma, about where you can run into a crowd of people if if they if you feel threatened by them. It's the same kind of thing. Now suddenly you can shoot somebody if you feel threatened by them too.
Brett, do you want to jump in?
There's another element to this too that comes from kind of the work we're seeing in the press, especially people. And I know we pick on Fox News a lot, but that's because they deserve it. We talk often on the show about how everything they do is focus group tested. Every line, every word, every moment of it is intentional. And because we know that about them, we can assume that they're trying to say exactly what we think they're trying to say. So when they describe a 17-year-old white kid as a child and a 13-year-old black kid as an adult, we don't necessarily know exactly what message they're trying to push, but we can assume that they intend to do it. It's kind of like with one of the old Foxisms where you'll notice commentators all the time, and you'll see this on lots of networks, but you see it constantly on Fox News, this phrase, "some people say." They'll say, "some people say," and then the next thing that comes out, that's going to be whatever that host thinks. All right. Some people say that this is true. Some people say that this child did this. Some people say that this 13-year-old is a grown man. All right. Some people say is kind of a thing. And this is kind of like that. Describing one of these kids as a kid and the other kid as a man is intentional. Now, what we get from that, we can interpret on our own, but I guarantee you it's not a slip of the tongue. It's not a mistake. It's exactly what they meant to say.
Yeah. And I would argue it's to diminish the difference in what happened. I mean, you have the white kid, the little boy who committed murder, or allegedly he's being tried for murder. You have this 13-year-old black kid who did nothing really wrong, but he ran. Is that something that you should be executed for? When I was 13, I ran from the police too. And I'll be honest, if I had black skin, I might not be here today. And I'm fully aware and cognizant of that possibility. And I think a lot of people in my community and a lot of people that I know don't really think about it in those terms, because we've all done stuff in our past where you go, hey, this could have turned out differently if I didn't have the white skin I'm wearing.
That's right.
Let me jump in here real quick, because I wrote this down earlier today. The Miranda rights for police. I have the right to be treated as a human. Anything I say or do doesn't give you the right to murder me. How about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I approve that message.
But here we're in this moment where you've got this juxtaposition, and it's kind of for me, as Brett has pointed out, I think it's intentional. Now, what's interesting to me is now that Tamir Rice's family is saying, hey, maybe you should be reopening the case of that kid being killed. And I agree, because if you see the video of Tamir Rice being murdered, that cop didn't even think.
No.
Poorly trained. He was wetting himself. And I think Brett, you said yesterday that you thought the cop shooting the Toledo kid probably just wet himself.
Yeah, I mean, it looked like he was just scared and not trained well enough. And to be honest, there are people who just shouldn't do this work. There just are. And if he, and some of us, we don't know it until the moment presents. Some of us don't know when we're going to fold until the moment presents itself, and we either step up or we don't. And some of us don't think, that our reaction is going to be what it ends up being. We all tend to think we're going to do one thing, then when reality hits, we do something else. This guy probably thought that he would react well in that situation, that he would keep his head, but in the moment when the thing actually happened, he just panicked.
Well, let me tell you, ultimately it comes down to training. And, if we in Iraq and Afghanistan are held to a higher standard and we have to absolutely follow escalation of force, then, I look at these police officers and I say that they have to be held to a higher standard. When I got a police officer who's been a police officer for 26 years that can't tell the difference between her service pistol, which should literally be like her hand, because 26 years, she's probably carried that same pistol for 26 years. And the difference between a pistol, the difference between the weight, the difference between the feel and that of a taser is absolutely completely different. I'm sitting here and I'm thinking to myself, we will absolutely court-martial troops for not doing the right thing in terms of escalation of force in a combat zone when we know we are on a two-way range. And yet I'm watching police officers that absolutely should be far more professional doing these things that they're doing. And it absolutely, I mean, it is destroying the reputation of police officers in everyone's mind across this country. Yeah. And they have got to get control of this now. It's killing me.
No, and this is where I say, look, I support the police when they're not wrong. And this is one of those weird moments because it's interesting. You either have to be in this binary choice of either you're for it or you're against it. It's got to be black or white, and I've never been in the black and white kind of world. Yeah, I support the police when they don't do things like this. I support people when they do the right things, and I just think we're in this moment where it's become such a polarized issue and so political that you've got trailer park people going, I support the police, where you go, wait a second, isn't every other episode of Cops in a trailer park? How's that possible?
Right. And, I mean, to be honest, I mean, just our inability to embrace complexity, and this need to choose, choose from column A or choose from column B. And you either support the police or you're on this side over here. You can do both. You can be critical of their improper actions and also really hope to create a better, a better police department and support them and so on. You can do both at the same time. And again, most of the times, especially when it gets into a more of a media-driven environment, again, binaries sell. If you can get a good 50-50, 60-40 binary, on television, that will sell and that will drive ratings and that's why we get what we get.
I was going to say too, we've talked before on the show about my uncle who's a retired police officer and a crazy right-wing Republican. But when it comes to issues like this, he gets really angry because as a cop who really put communities first, he believed in that kind of community policing. And whenever he sees, these cops sort of pulling their weapon willy-nilly, he gets frustrated because he's like, when we were trained, if you pulled your weapon, it was because you intended to shoot it. You didn't pull it unless you intended to shoot it. And now it's like, pull it first and ask questions later. Shoot first, ask questions later.
No, it's an excellent point. It's an excellent point, because I was watching the video of the soldier in Virginia that got pulled over and they pepper sprayed. But if you watched the cop as he's kind of pointing his gun, like I go, where did you learn to hold a gun like that? What training is that? And why would you have the gun out? I mean, and they all did. And it's the same thing I've said about when someone's being arrested. When I was a kid, put your hands on the car and they'd put your hands behind your back and they'd put you away. Now it's slam you to the ground, grab both your legs, knee in the back. It comes down to some bad training. So is retraining possible? Do you think, Rich?
We need police reform in this country. But once again, if we actually raise the pay, even Pat Robertson said it yesterday or today, we need to raise the pay of police officers because when you do, you're going to get a better caliber of person applying for the jobs. And I think that that's important because, right now, like what she was talking about her father, her uncle that was a police officer. I mean, this makes the profession look absolute, it looked like a bunch of novices is what it makes it look like. When I was a paratrooper for 24 years, if I looked across a daggone football field and I saw another paratrooper that wasn't looking and doing the right things, I would walk through fire to tighten up his shot group because he was my profession. And, we got to see police officers starting to come out and start absolutely standing up for their profession against other bad cops. The code of silence, that's got to go.
And that's something that has been a really big problem with all these different ends. How many times do you see an officer, or especially an officer of real standing, someone who's been around for a long time, step up and say, okay, we have a problem and we need to fix it. And they're just not. And they really need to. The time was a long time ago, but, it's way past time now.
Well, we remember we're now seeing where an African-American female police officer literally like 11 years ago, told her partner that he was in the wrong for a chokehold. And what happened was she was fired. I mean, they just now brought it up. She won the lawsuit. She's getting her back pay. She's getting her retirement. But at the end of the day, she was doing what was right. And what did they do? They punished her for it. It's wrong.
Well, what's interesting to me is, and Sarah brought it up that her uncle, who is a retired policeman, a right-wing policeman. And it's interesting that every cop I know no liberal cops. Everyone I know is straight down the book, black and white, far right-wing kind of thinking. And it tells me that that's the kind of mentality of people who get into that job. And two, I look at what happened in Connecticut, where the Connecticut State Police wouldn't take an applicant whose IQ was above, I think it was 120. And their argument was, we don't want people who are going to be that smart because, one, they might leave, or two, they might start thinking for themselves. So I'm curious your thoughts, Sarah.
Oh my God, I didn't even know about that. That's absurd.
It was about 10 years ago.
These are the kind of people that you want, because, not just because they're they hopefully make the intelligent decision, but these are folks you want to hang on to for advancement. Folks who can become, detectives and chiefs, who can run the whole department and make the right decisions, because they're smart enough to see, when something's not working and implement changes. And I mean, I can't imagine that you would want somebody who, you would want the worst to be, why are we giving somebody like that a gun? That blows me away.
Spot on. And once again, like I said, when you raise the pay, you're going to start to see people with bachelor's degrees in criminal justice applying to become police officers. And that's not a bad thing. They got a lot to protect, and that means that they know that they have to do the right thing so that they can continue, upward momentum in their job, and also to be able to stay in that job.
Now, just to kind of wrap this up, I want to make it clear that I support the police, as I said, when they're not wrong. I'm not on the defund the police bandwagon. I think we should be giving them more resources. We should be making their jobs easier, dealing with mental health issues much differently. There's a lot of things we need to be doing. And sadly, in my state of Pennsylvania, they closed up all the state mental hospitals, and we ended up using law enforcement as our frontline mental health care workers. That kind of stuff has to stop. And sadly, the police are at the bottom of the hill because, as they say, what rolls downhill, and they've gotten a lot of it. But here's the thing: we give them a lot of praise, we give them a lot of power, and they've got to be held accountable when they don't use it properly. Just my thoughts.
I think we have to go, from the current mantra of law and order to what they put on the side of the car, which is protect and serve.
Amen.
And we need to change the philosophy of how this part of our society works, and we need to stop with the, hyper aggressive, kind of talk and approach to these things, and then focus on what the true mission is, which is to protect and serve.
There you go. Gonna take a quick break. Right back after this with our all-star panel of Rich Ojeda, Sarah Burris, and the Professor Brett Pransky. Stick around. Right back after this.
Waving the flag of freedom for people, not corporations. Rick Smith.
The annual threat assessment describes an array of threats we are facing in the coming year.
U.S. Global Threat Assessment warns climate change is a clear and present danger.
Japan insists the water is safe.
Fukushima's radioactive water to be dumped into the ocean. Plus, to combat climate change, France moves to ban short flights.
How does that combat climate change? Don't tell me. All of those stories and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
Ecological degradation and a changing climate will continue to fuel disease outbreaks, threaten food and water security, exacerbate political instability and humanitarian crises.
Okay, yeah, but other than that, why is climate change a problem? This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, I know you've got the global threat assessment, blah, blah, blah. I'm only interested in why banning short flights helps climate change, but I guess we'll get there at the very end.
Yes, we will.
That's what I thought.
In its latest Global Threat Assessment report, the U.S. intelligence community cautions that man-made climate change remains a looming and growing global threat to U.S. interests at home and abroad. In the first hearing in 2 years on the annual Global Threat Report, Director of National Intelligence Avril Haines warned the Senate Intelligence Committee this week that global warming risks further destabilizing a world shaken by the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic and will drive migration.
Ecological degradation and a changing climate will continue to fuel disease outbreaks, threaten food and water security, exacerbate political instability and humanitarian crises. Warmer weather can generate direct, immediate impacts, for example, through more intense, frequent, and variable extreme weather events, in addition to driving conflicts over scarce natural resources. And the changing climate, conflict, and economic deprivation will drive vulnerable populations from their homes, heightening humanitarian needs and increasing the risk of political upheaval.
That sounds like a problem.
In other news, despite coronavirus shutdowns around the world, levels of carbon dioxide and methane in the atmosphere rose in 2020. Methane racked up its highest year-over-year increase since records began in 1983. And that matters because methane traps much more heat in the atmosphere than carbon dioxide on shorter timescales. Part of the surge is attributed to the massive build-out of natural gas infrastructure worldwide.
What's the other part?
The other part is from biological sources like wetlands and cattle.
Cow farts.
Yep.
I knew it.
Atmospheric CO2 levels have reached their highest point in 3.6 million years. The last time atmospheric CO2 levels were this high, sea level was 78 feet higher.
Yeah, I remember that.
The government of Japan this week announced that 2 years from now, it will intentionally discharge into the Pacific Ocean more than 300 million gallons of radioactively contaminated wastewater that has accumulated over the past decade since the meltdown of the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant, because it is running out of room to store it. Japan says the treated water is within safe levels, but critics warn that radioactive isotopes in the water could potentially contaminate the marine food chain.
And that is exactly how we got Godzilla. I'm just saying. What are you doing, Japan?
China's foreign minister challenged Japan's deputy prime minister that if the treated radioactive water is safe, then, quote, please drink it.
Oh, God.
Here in the U.S., President Biden's first budget has been sent to Congress, reflecting his spending priorities for fiscal year 2022, which include undoing much of the damage done by the Trump administration. Biden's budget seeks massive increases in funding for the Environmental Protection Agency and for clean energy innovation, research, and deployment, electrifying the federal vehicle fleet, environmental justice initiatives, and climate and weather science research.
It's the undoing.
More good news. The U.S. solar industry had a record year in 2020 despite the COVID-19 pandemic slowing down some projects. That's due mostly to solar's increasing cost competitiveness with fossil fuels.
2020 was the best year ever.
Finally, France is moving to cut more emissions and clean up air pollution. The French National Assembly voted to ban airline flights within France where there are alternatives that take less than 2.5 hours, like the country's high-speed train system.
So there'll be less flights, so there'll be less emissions from those flights.
Exactly.
But won't that mean people use more cars, which makes things worse?
No, they'll take the high-speed train system. And it's offering car owners an incentive to trade in their aging, polluting clunkers with a $3,000 incentive to use toward the purchase of an electric bike.
How much does an electric bike cost?
About $3,000.
Good deal. For much more on all of those stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, please check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find, follow, and share us planet-wide, even in France, on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So the big news today, John Ryan Schaefer, 53-year-old guy, back on January 6th. Thought it'd be a good idea. Be involved in the insurrection. Spray a little bear spray on some cops. Do some nasty things. Probably going to get a little time in jail. He has pled guilty to 2 counts, 2 charges that have stemmed from his involvement in the insurrection. And what's coming is lots of singing, lots of rolling over, lots of telling everything he knows. And he's the first one, so he's probably going to get the best deal. And here to share some thoughts on that, our all-star panel, Rich Ojeda, Sarah Burris, and the Professor Brett Pransky. Rich, let's start with you, because I know this is where you want to go. What do you think of the deal? What do you think he's saying?
Well, first off, he was facing 6 charges and they've been reduced down to 2. So that right there tells you that he absolutely is rolling and telling on everybody. He's facing, I believe, 3.5 to 4.5 years now, and it could have been a lot more. These people, they all got together and they thought they were, doing the right thing. Of course, that's what they thought. They were ill-informed. A lot of them were, lacking education, and they did what they did. But I can tell you right now, we already know that the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys kind of did some things behind the scenes to make sure that everything was going to take place on the 6th. And I will tell you that I bet you this guy has given every single name. And of course, before they can give him, okay, you're only going to be charged with these 2 things, is they first have to go make sure that every name he gave them and everything that he told them is absolutely spot on true. So there's a lot of people out there right now that had better be scared, especially if you were in the leadership of the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys, because this guy is taking you down.
Anybody else want to jump into the middle of that one?
Well, I tell you what, when it first happened, and the response to it, afterwards was surprise as these people started getting picked up at the airport, and you remember all the videos there, they were just completely beside themselves, when they were getting arrested at the airport. You're ruining my life and all that stuff. And now they're rolling over and giving up everybody. I mean, they really did think that they could go to the Capitol on January 6th, commit a little light treason, and then just walk, and then just go home. And now they're finding out that that's not how our justice system works, and they're surprised. And it's just watching the privilege walk away, from them as they're like, wait a minute, you mean you're going to arrest me? You mean I'm not special enough that I get to smear poop on the Capitol walls? How dare you arrest me? I should be able to do this stuff everywhere because I'm me. And just watching that whole worldview shatter is, I can't help but think it's the greatest thing in the world to watch.
No, I'm loving it. I'm loving watching it. But here's the thing: by him rolling and getting probably a lesser sentence, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to plead out and they're going to get very light sentences in order to get to the top. So are we okay with letting these people go if we can get to the people who funded this? Because for me, from the beginning on January 6th, I'm saying, the people who are in there, we got to hold them accountable. I want the people who caused this, the people who funded it, the people who allowed it to happen, because we were talking about this the other day. How is it possible during that rally, those people were able to have flag poles with the eagle things on the top of them that they could use as weapons? Every time I've been at the Capitol for a rally, you could only have paper tubes. How did they get to be able to walk through those gates with flags with those eagles on top? Sarah, your thoughts?
And this wasn't just the Capitol. This is the Ellipse. They started out at the Ellipse, which is on the White House complex, and those rules are even, harsher than the Capitol. So the fact that they allowed them to do this just blows my mind. And that is a Secret Service issue. And I would love to haul them in and have some questions about, what went on there, and if there was a decision made, if there was, somebody from the Trump White House who said, no, these guys are cool, let them have their flagpoles. I'm curious, I really want to know if that decision was made and who made it and when and why.
Well, exactly. And go ahead, Rich.
I will tell you that, one of the things that I think when he was talking about a little while ago about them being arrested at the airports and things like that, I absolutely still to this day want to know what is in the mind of these people now. Because, when they were standing in front of Donald Trump and he was telling them, we're going to march down and I'll be with you. And then they go down there, they do what they do. And then the next time that they see Donald Trump, he's standing in the White House and he's basically saying, you all are intruders and you will be prosecuted. I can guarantee you that I would think that anybody right now that is facing charges absolutely should have already turned off that I love Donald Trump switch.
And look, I'm hoping trials come out of this. I'm hoping that that we see that come out because I think as a country we need it. Let's move on from this to the other bit of treason going on. In my view, we found out again, and again. We found out again. Did I mention we found out again that Paul Manafort gave Konstantin Kilimnik internal polling data? Did I mention we found out again this week? Because it's been 4.5 years, we've been finding out that Paul Manafort gave Konstantin Kilimnik internal polling data to give to the Russians. Let's start with you, Rich, because I got to get your thoughts on finding out again, the smoking gun again.
Well, you know what? This guy is an absolute traitor. He is a traitor. And, now that Donald Trump is no longer in the White House, he can pardon him. I say they bust his tail again, because that's exactly what needs to happen. These people are absolutely working with the other side. Michael Flynn, all of them, they all should be held accountable and they should absolutely go down.
Sarah?
True story. And the thing about Manafort is that they can charge him, they can try him in, I think they did it in DC last time, and they could do it in Virginia or maybe the other way around. So all of this stuff can happen because he did it in both DC and Virginia. So he can be charged again for the same kind of stuff because he did it in both states. And the thing that is different about this information is we knew that Paul Manafort handed the information to Konstantin Kilimnik. What Kilimnik then did with it was, couldn't be proved. That was the big thing that Manafort got stuck on is, we know that he did this, but we don't know why or where it went. And with this new announcement of the sanctions, we find out that they do have the receipts. They have the information that showed, here's the chain of command that it went through. Here's how the information was delivered to Russian intelligence and what Russian intelligence then turned around and did with it. And what's interesting about that information to me is that it's been, 4 months that the Biden White House has been operational. How did they in 4 months find all of this information? For me, it feels like something that, maybe it's possible, I don't know, but it seems to me like something that, maybe came up in the last, 6 or 8 months. And I'm curious if we knew about this before when the Trump administration.
I got to think that we knew. I actually think we do because we have the Mueller report. And then look, this is where one of those moments where I go, I don't think Mueller did what he was charged to do. And now this to me shows a direct link. This is at least. Does anyone disagree that this looks like collusion? This looks and smells like collusion. Anyone disagree with that?
Yeah, you cut out for a second, but yeah, this is one of those things where again, we knew so much about this, and it was that one little piece of information that somehow was kept from the Mueller report and from the Mueller team. This is the thing that prosecutor Andrew Weissman was talking about yesterday. Is he said if we had this, we would have been, this would have been exactly.
What the hell happened? Well, that was interesting. No, but to follow up on this, and Sarah, I appreciate the thought. I guess our all-star panel just disappeared. And we will figure out how that happened. Wow, that was kind of interesting, and kind of weird all at the same time. In that, wow, just everybody just disappeared. I'm guessing possibly that we have lost the group there. So we will we'll move along with that. Wow, just everyone disappeared. But our all-star panel, folks, Sarah Burris, a reporter from RawStory, Rich Ojeda, the national spokesperson for No Dem Left Behind, and our good friend, the professor, Brett Pransky. Now look, what we found out, again, and as we were kind of joking a little bit, what we found out was pretty simple. We found out that Kilimnik is a known Russian asset. He was a known Russian agent. And also, we know that Manafort gave internal polling data. And you go, why is the internal polling data, why is that important? Why does that matter? Why does it even matter that it was internal polling data? Who uses that? Well, this is what the campaign does to target its resources. So this is stuff that they don't even share with everybody in the campaign. This is what Trump, the inner circle, Bannon, Manafort, this is what the handful of people have and target their resources to be able to do. This is one of those weird kind of moments. By giving this information to the Russians, it gave them the ability to target their actions to the places that would have helped Trump the most. Because understand, the reality is very simple. The Russians wanted Trump to win. Doesn't get any simpler than that. The Russians wanted Trump to be in the White House because it benefited them in numerous ways. The fact that not much pushback about Crimea, not a lot of pushback over possibly going into Ukraine, and all of the other global crimes that were going on, while simultaneously hacking the heck out of us. And this is the scary part, which is why Biden has put sanctions on. And of course, today the Russians retaliated with some sanctions of their own. But this is now this kind of, hey, we know what you've done. And at some point, we've got to hold you accountable. This is the frustrating part in this, because the Republican Party is basically a wholly owned subsidiary of Putin at this point, because you don't hear them coming out and saying, yeah, we did something wrong. And I said, back in 2017 when Trump took office, look, if he comes out and says, yes, the Russians did all this stuff, yes, they were doing all of this stuff, I didn't have any part of it, let's get a commission together, let's go after him, let's make sure it doesn't happen again, I would have probably supported something like that. Okay, you could have been just the fortunate person who was the lucky recipient of their crimes, of their attack. You could have just been that lucky person. But they didn't do that. They didn't do that at all. What they did is they tried to cover it up. And again, for me, Manafort fell down, Mueller fell down on the job. But in that report, over 100 points of contact. Over 100 points of contact. That's what's known as coordination. Now we're finding out. And now we know. Now we know where that information went. And we've got real problems ahead. Because the former guy has left us in kind of a pickle. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Again, I'd like to thank our all-star panel. I'd like to hear your thoughts, though. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast. The Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as always, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.